The scent of her perfume still lingered in the air, a sickeningly sweet trace of jasmine that had once been my favorite. It clung to the sheets, the pillows, the very fabric of our bedroom, a constant reminder of the lies woven into the fabric of our marriage. Sarah had always been meticulous, a creature of habit. That's why her sudden change in routine had been the first red flag. Late nights at the office, weekend conferences out of town, a newfound need for privacy with her phone. Each detail seemed insignificant on its own, but together, they had coalesced into a suffocating blanket of suspicion, one that had kept me awake countless nights. I tried talking to her, of course. Gently at first, my voice laced with concern rather than accusation. But she'd met my questions with evasion, a practiced sigh, a dismissive wave of her hand. "You're being paranoid, Marg," she'd say, her eyes avoiding mine. "You're imagining things." And maybe I was. I thought so in those desperate moments when denial felt safer than the truth. But the knot of dread in my stomach only tightened. So I started paying closer attention. I became a detective in my own life, carefully piecing together the jigsaw puzzle of her infidelity. The credit card bills with unfamiliar restaurant names, the whispered phone calls she'd take in the hallway, the subtle shift in her body language when I tried to touch her. Each detail pointed to the same horrifying conclusion. Then, last Saturday, I found the jacket. It wasn't just any jacket. It was a men's leather bomber, expensive, with a distinct scent of sandalwood and something else I couldn't quite place. Something that didn't belong in our house. She tried to hide it, stuffing it haphazardly behind the coats in the hall closet. But I had seen it. I hadn't said anything at the time, instead choosing to play the role of the clueless husband. It was agonizing, like holding my breath underwater. But I knew I needed to get it right, and the perfect opportunity would present itself soon. Tonight, Sarah was going out again, a girls' night, she called it, a new addition to her social calendar. She'd been in the bathroom for the last hour, the sounds of the hair dryer and her muffled singing grating on my nerves. I sat on the edge of the bed, flipping through an old magazine, pretending to be engrossed while my insides churned with a mix of anger and despair. The bathroom door finally opened, and she emerged, a vision of polished perfection. A low-cut crimson dress clung to her figure, and her hair, a golden cascade of waves, was styled to perfection. She looked almost like the girl I had fallen in love with, the girl I had vowed to spend the rest of my life with. Almost, but the sparkle in her eyes wasn't for me, and her smile was too practiced, too rehearsed. "I'm ready," she announced, her voice a little too cheerful. "You look beautiful, Sarah," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. It was a performance I had been rehearsing in my head for days. She preened at the compliment, oblivious of the coldness beneath my words. "Thanks," she said, grabbing her clutch from the dresser. "Don't wait up. I'll probably be late." She leaned down to give me a quick, perfunctory kiss on the cheek, her lips barely brushing my skin. It felt like kissing a stranger. "Have fun," I said, my eyes fixed on her. The casualness in my tone was a stark contrast to the fury building inside me. The second the front door clicked shut behind her, I was up, my movements quick and purposeful. I walked to the hall closet, reached behind the coats, and pulled out the bomber jacket. It was heavier than I remembered, the leather supple and worn in all the right places. I walked back into the bedroom, tossed it on the bed, and waited. And waited. The minutes stretched into an eternity. I could hear the ticking of the clock, each tick a mocking reminder of the time she was wasting with someone else, time she should have been spending with me. My anger felt like a living thing inside me, a hot, seething mass threatening to erupt. I took several deep breaths, trying to maintain control, trying to hold on to the plan I had so carefully crafted. Finally, I heard the soft thud of her footsteps on the stairs. The front door clicked open, then I heard her light steps in the hallway. The bedroom door swung open, and Sarah stepped into the room. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw me sitting on the edge of the bed, the jacket in my hands. Her eyes widened in horror, the color draining from her face. It was almost comical the way her mask of composure crumbled. The cheerful facade was gone, replaced by naked fear. "What is that?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer her. Instead, I held up the jacket, letting it dangle from my fingers, the fabric swaying in the dim light. Her eyes were glued to it, her face now a mask of pure panic. She understood what this meant. This wasn't just about a jacket. It was about betrayal, about the months of lies she had spun, about the life we had built together that she had so casually shattered. "It's a jacket," I said, my voice flat and emotionless. "I believe it belongs to someone else." "No," she said, her voice rising in pitch. That's not what you think, isn't it?" I asked, my eyes locking on hers, letting all the pain I had endured shine through. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The fear had paralyzed her. I stood up, the jacket still hanging limply in my hand, and walked slowly toward her. Each step was deliberate, like a predator stalking its prey. "I know, Sarah," I said, stopping in front of her. "I know about the late nights, the conferences, the whispered phone calls. I know about him." A single tear traced a path down her cheek, but I felt no sympathy, only a cold, bitter satisfaction at seeing her finally stripped bare. How did you find out?" she asked, her voice cracking. "It doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is that you broke the vows you made to me. You betrayed me, Sarah. You betrayed us." I dropped the jacket on the floor between us, like an offering or a gauntlet. "I want you to leave. Now." But where am I supposed to go?" she stammered. "That's not my problem," I said, my voice hard and unforgiving. "You should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with someone else." She looked around the room, her eyes searching for something, anything. She saw the photos on the dresser, the ones of US, of our life together. For a moment, I thought she might finally understand the magnitude of her actions, but then her eyes hardened. "Fine," she said, her voice laced with a newfound defiance. I don't want to be here anyway." She walked toward the closet, her step stiff and angry. She grabbed a suitcase, tossed in a few clothes, and then walked back to the door without looking at me. "You'll regret this, Marg," she said, her voice trembling with anger that I didn't respond. I just watched as she walked out the door, the sound of her footsteps fading away into the night. I stood in the middle of the room, the silence deafening. It was over, finally over, but the silence was broken a few minutes later when I heard a vehicle pull up. I looked out the window and saw that she hadn't left. Rather, she was speaking to someone in a car. A man, the same man who owned the jacket, I thought to myself, with no surprise. It took all the restraint within me not to erupt with rage, but I had one final act to perform. I walked downstairs and opened the front door. Sarah and the man had just embraced, and were about to get in the car when I stepped out onto the porch. "Leaving already?" I called out to them, a subtle hint of sarcasm in my tone. They both stopped in their tracks and looked at me, confusion and perhaps a hint of apprehension on their faces. "Yes?" the man replied, looking back and forth between Sarah and me. It was then that I recognized his face. He was a colleague of mine from work. It was all falling into place now. I smiled at him, a polite yet menacing grin they clearly didn't understand. "Oh, no problem at all," I said, addressing the man. "In fact, I wanted to thank you." Sarah was now fully alert, sensing that whatever was about to happen wouldn't end well for her. The man just looked at me quizzically, not understanding my words. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the email application, displaying the email I had sent out just a few minutes earlier. The email contained detailed documentation of our relationship, including images and specific dates and times. It also had a detailed account of their affair, which I had discovered using her own phone records, which I had taken the liberty of gathering earlier that night. I held the phone out so they could both see the email. It was a group email, and the recipients included everyone at the workplace, the HR department, and upper management. I had also attached images of them together, ones that I had captured myself over the past few weeks. You see, I continued, I figured our company should be aware of this. It violates company policy. I finished the statement with another, more sinister smile. Sarah instantly knew that this was the end. She would now face severe repercussions at her job. The man, on the other hand, looked as if he had seen a ghost. His face turned a shade of white I'd never seen before. This can't... The man stammered as he stared at the email and photos on the screen. Sarah turned to me, her face a mixture of fear and betrayal. You can't do this to me, Mark. This is insane, she cried in a panicked tone, her voice shrill. I just laughed, a deep, satisfying laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me. Oh, but I can, and I will, Sarah, just like you did to me for months now. Enjoy your new life. I then stepped inside the house and closed the door behind me, shutting them both out. I knew that my life was now forever changed, but for the first time in months, I felt a sense of relief, a sense of peace. The weight that had been pressing down on my chest for so long was finally gone. As I walked back into the quiet emptiness of the bedroom, I knew that I would be okay. The betrayal had cut deep, but it had also finally freed me.